Before we start, we do want to put a trigger warning at the front of the show here. We will be discussing the report on abuse in women's soccer by Sally Yates. Our hearts go out to all players and anyone who has endured this type of abuse, and thank everyone who shared their stories.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. As ever, I'm Ali.
And I'm Sarah, and this is an interesting, horrible day that we are recording. Sorry to get right into that.
No, it's true.
We've got a great episode here. Like we mentioned, we are going to talk about the report, but what we've also got is a brief chat on the amazing games of the NWSL and an absolutely incredible interview with Suzy Wrack, who we love so much. It was a blast talking to her. It's an incredible interview. If you don't want to listen to anything on the abuse in women's soccer, we completely understand, and we're going to put a timestamp for when the Suzy Wrack interview starts in the episode description. So go check that out. Please take care of yourself if you don't want to hear any more about it. Everybody, take care of yourselves out there. Go to the timestamp, listen to the Suzy Wrack interview. It's amazing.
So, as we mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to be talking about the Yates report that has literally just dropped for us on Monday. We haven't read it all, obviously. It's a 300-page report, but we've managed to go through for some of the key pieces that have been going around. It's heavy, it's heartbreaking, but it's got to be talked about.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Just like very candidly, we were going to talk about the fun weekend of NWSL that just happened, right? There was an amazing weekend of soccer in the NWSL, and we were going to do that leading into a fun Suzy Wrack interview that is obviously still in here. And instead, Ali and I got on, we're like, it's so hard to read. Like, we just spent an hour on Zoom with each other, silently reading and talking to each other. But we feel like it's important, and this is kind of what we're here for, is to report on things and talk about things in ways maybe that even like more mainstream media can't. So we're going to get into it. For those of you who haven't read the report, let's do just like a brief overview on what it is, what the structure of it is, and what's in it.
Yeah. So basically, it focuses on three coaches specifically, and that's Paul Riley, who was at the Western New York Flash, the Thorns, and North Carolina Courage. Christy Holly, who was at Sky Blue and Racing Louisville, and Rory Dames, who was at Chicago. It also covers the US soccer system as a whole and what it did and didn't do to safeguard these players from what did occur.
I think like the big headline is the quote from Sally Yates that says, quote, "We found a league where abuse was systemic." And that says it all. And Cindy Parlow-Cone has publicly said that she knows that this is systemic and that it starts in the youth and makes its way up. And that's just the overall. Some key pieces have been circulating and like snippets and stories about each of the coaches, which I think maybe is important for us to highlight. And this is where a really big trigger warning comes in. So let's get into that. Some of the key pieces about each of these coaches that are circulating that are going to be hard for us to talk about, but let's try.
So the big takeaway is the headline grabbing one is going to be the Kristen Press, Tobin Heath story about why they left the NWSL completely so they didn't have to play for Racing Louisville with everything that happened with Christy Holly, and also talking about the multiple complaints that Press made about Dames. There's one from 2014, there was one in 2018, and how little was done. It was literally a case of, well, we'll just trade her rights away.
Yeah, it explicitly said that she brought the complaint to Jill Ellis of U.S. Soccer and the head of the Chicago Red Stars, I believe, at the time, and Rory Dames offered to step down, and whoever was in charge at the Chicago Red Stars said, no, like, I reject your resignation. Not even how little was done, but what was done literally in contradiction with that report. But, you know, Kristen Press and Tobin Heath, two players with some of the most power, and what becomes increasingly clear as we read more of this report is that it was players who were rendered kind of powerless and whose career and livelihood was really left in the hands of these coaches who fully abused their power and preyed on them because they were in those positions where they didn't have the type of power that, a Kristen Press and a Tobin Heath have.
That's why I'm saying they're going to be the big headline stories out of this thing, because they have probably the biggest name recognition of the named players.
Yeah.
Because there's a fair few anonymous that wanted to remain anonymous, and it's still so brave that they come out and give them their story. But those are the two big US national team players that have given their name to this report.
Mm-hmm. And we have so much respect for everybody who has spoken out about this, whether it was in this report or not. The report is essentially broken down. Like, there's a whole section on Paul Riley, and then there's a whole section on Chris Hawley, and then there's a whole section on Rory Dames. And it's utterly disgusting, some of these stories. The Chris Hawley ones are extremely graphic. Maybe those are the ones that I've read. And I feel like it's important to note what we were talking about earlier, Allie, that he's currently married to U.S. women's national team legend Christy Rampone.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we don't want to put any blame on her. It's him. It's all him. They got together when he was her boss at Sky Blue. He was her coach. And the reason he left Sky Blue, it's been documented, it's out there, is because he started a relationship with her when she was his employee. And if that's not a pattern of behaviour,
then we don't know what is.
Yeah.
Do we want to speak to anything else that's come out about Chris Hawley and Paul Riley, or shall we move along?
I'm just going to point out, we did say that they are the most explicit. I just want to say that Erin Simons, again, has waived her anonymity to talk about the long-standing abuse from Christy Hawley. We're talking from when she left Sky Blue in 2018 to when she was removed from Racing Louisville back in 2021.
That was the hardest to read.
It's hard, and I want to point that out to people, that the whole report is hard, but that particular section is graphic, and it is, if you don't want to hear about sexual abuse, skip that part, because just read like the summaries, because that was heartbreaking and really, really hard.
That one, it's predatory. We had the pleasure of interviewing Erin very recently, who is one of the most amazing people that we've gotten to speak with. And not about this, about fun soccer, just about her as a person. And we'll get to release that soon. But we love you, Erin.
Yeah.
We love you. And then, of course, there are the two very brave souls who initially helped break this story with Meg Linehan, who are named in the whole Paul Riley section. And I also want to note that we need to talk about how race comes up in this report. We mentioned Kristen Press, and she is noted having called out Rory Dames for saying a lot of sexist and racist things. But we just need to call this out. There's a lot of stories of racism from coaches throughout this report. Everything from racist slurs being used to Black players saying that they felt that other players, coaches, and GMs were clearly not comfortable being around Black players and not able to connect with Black players. And it's just very important to note, because we're talking about players with less power. It seems through this report we're preyed upon more. And it's always important to highlight and kind of center the marginalized group, where you know that however it's affecting everybody, it's really affecting them that way, plus the layer of racism on top of it.
Yep.
I feel like the last thing I almost want to say about this is there's a lot of stuff about, like, U.S. soccer is using Safe Sport. For those of you who don't know, Safe Sport it's just like a nonprofit that is supposed to train people in preventing, abuse. It's the same thing that U.S. gymnastics was using. So I don't know why that's still part of the conversation.
I did not realise that. So it's safe to say that Safe Sport, and please excuse my French, is fucking shit.
Yeah, Safe Sport is not a safe thing to use. Let's just
Yeah.
leave it there. At the end of the report, Sally Yates details a lot of recommendations in how the NWSL and US Soccer can move forward. And might I just say that a lot of them are things that should have been in place a very long time ago. And I hope that in moving forward, everybody implements these. What have we learned? Everything needs to be burnt down and rebuilt. #burn it down. Okay, we are going to move on and talk about the NWSL because while it's most important to highlight the brave souls who have come forward and all of that, it is also important to support the players in their craft, in their profession, in what they do. And it was a really fun weekend of soccer between the white lines on the soccer field.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There were some absolutely fantastic matchups, some surprise wins. I mean, Racing Louisville beating Kansas City was...
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to get Sarah started now.
Racing Louisville taking down Kansas City and Desiree Scott getting a red card, meaning she will not be available for the playoff game. That is not the way you want to enter the playoffs if you're Kansas City. I'm getting ahead of ourselves. We're not doing the playoff picture yet. But that was there were some wild scores, including our game of the week, which is going to be what it has to be, of Gotham FC versus Portland Thorns. Have we done a Gotham game of the week yet? Probably not.
Because they've been terrible.
This was wild, everybody.
So you got to be there.
I was there. Let me just take you through the general flow of emotions in the stadium, okay? So, yeah, it was not great weather. I was like huddled under my computer. I had like a jacket over my computer and I was huddled under it. The basic flow of the game went like this. People were like skeptically hopeful, for some reason thought that maybe the last game of the season something would be different. And Gotham was really showing up in the first half. And I was like, oh my gosh, like if we score first, this could really happen. But if Portland scores first, I think that the win's going to be taken out of our sails. And then boom, Kawasumi puts a goal away. It's 1-0. The stadium goes wild and everybody's kind of like, could this happen? I think that this could happen. Oh my gosh, this could happen. And then like smack in the face, 5 minutes later, penalty kick gets awarded to Portland. Sophia Smith buries it. And then a minute later later scores a second goal, catches Gotham on the back foot. And at this point, everybody goes into halftime like, this is a disaster. This is Gotham season in a nutshell. I was going to say,
this is basically Gotham season all over again.
All of the energy has been sucked out of the stadium at this point. You think you're going into halftime 1-0, and within the course of 5 minutes, you're going into halftime 2-1.
2-1, yeah.
And then it was so wild. And then the second half starts. Portland puts another away, and you're just like, oh, do I have to watch this?
Doing Morgan Weaver things.
Right.
It was a cracker of a goal, to be fair.
It was a gorgeous goal, yeah. But really, the vibe in the stadium was like, do I have to watch this?
The weather's
for
terrible.
Another 30
the game's
minutes
terrible.
Now?
Can I leave now?
And then 56-minute Onamanu scores. Now it's 3-2, and when that second goal went in for Onamanu, that stadium turned around. Like it was like a club. They were like bumping music. Everybody was dancing. The press box lost all professionalism. And then when McCall Zerboni scored the goal to tie it up, I have the best video of like everybody who works for Gotham sits like in the first row of the press box, and they are all just like dancing and shouting. It was a blast. It was a blast. And OL Reign definitely owes Gotham like a party or something.
Yeah, because they've now got the shield. Thanks.
Yes, so if Portland had won, Portland would have gotten the shield. But because Portland lost, if OL Reign knew going into their game that night, if they took the win, they would take the shield, and that's what happened. But let's break this game down a little bit.
Even up until their goal, Gotham looked like they had Portland's number. Like, they were defending well, they were going out on the break. It was probably some of the best football I've seen Gotham play this season.
Yes, I think this was the best game that they played all season, period. McCall Zerboni said that this was the first time under Hugh Menzies that they had played the same formation, like in 2 games consecutively, and that had to have something to do with it. I'll also say that I think that it's because what Gotham was doing well was counterattacking.
Yes.
They were placing so much emphasis all year on like, we want to be the team that has possession and controls the game. And finally they were playing Portland, and I think that it seemed like their game plan was like, okay, well, it's Portland, so we're not going to have possession, so let's find good ways to counter. And here's what they did well. Number 1, they countered down the wings. It was quick counters down the wings, which is where Portland is most vulnerable. I mean, you don't want to attack the middle of Portland's field.
No, that was the thing. It was like they clearly had watched Portland play this season and was like, right, who don't we want to go up against? Who can we go up against?
So I think it was that, and then a lot of the players spoke to their midfield rotation finally working. And I think that says it all. When you have a midfield rotation that's working on offense and on defense, then you'll be able to find people in the holes. And if not, then you won't. And so I think it's that simple. This was absolutely the best game for Gotham. And on the other hand, on the Portland side, I know it was unfortunate for Portland fans, but I don't think that this is a negative way to go into a postseason. They're fine.
They still get their bye.
Exactly. They still get the bye. They're still hosting home games. So I don't think that it has any super negative effect on Gotham. There was some really fun chatter after the game. All of the Gotham players were like, I don't know, well, we heard through the grapevine that they brought the shield. And if they brought the shield to our field, that was some extra motivation. We don't need extra motivation, but that was some extra motivation. And some of players have come out on Twitter and been like, we just want to clarify, the shield wasn't there, but it was definitely the player
Chinese whispers going through,
the player gossip reel had made its way to Gotham, being like, we're bringing the shield. It was some fun banter, I have to say.
So do we want to quickly go through this playoff structure about all the permutations?
Let's do it. So do you want to try, or should I do it?
I am going to attempt.
Okay.
Because I don't understand.
I saw somebody tweet the other day. I was like, I know this is super American, and please don't yell at me for this, but winning the league will always be better than winning the playoffs. Everybody was
agree.
What are you talking
I agree with
about?
that person. I agree with that person.
Well, I don't. As somebody who's won the league and then lost in the playoffs, it's pretty painful.
Don't have playoffs. But
it was pretty painful. I was like, well, I'd rather have lost the league and won the playoffs. Okay, Allie, let's go. Talk us through it.
As we've said, OA Reign won the Shield because they came first in this section of the league.
You're not allowed to do this if you're going to have that commentary.
Fine. So they won the Shield, and therefore it's themselves and Portland get a bye, meaning that they go straight through to the semi-final of the playoffs. They don't have to work for it. They're there. They've done it.
So the third place team, San Diego Wave, is hosting the sixth place team, Chicago Red Stars. The Chicago just slid into the playoffs. They were the last game of the regular season on Sunday. Because North Carolina tied, Chicago needed a win to get into the playoffs. They got the win against Angel City at home in front of their biggest crowd ever, sold out for the Red Stars. So that's awesome. Shout out to them. So San Diego Wave will host Chicago. San Diego, of course, being the first ever expansion team to make the playoffs in their first year. That's third hosting sixth. And then the fourth place team, Houston Dash, will host fifth place Kansas City. Houston also hosting their first ever playoff game. They've been in the playoffs. They've never hosted the playoffs.
So the winner of Dash versus KC will play OL Reign. And then the winner of San Diego versus Chicago will play Portland. Now, both OL and Portland are hosting their semi-finals. So it'll be an away match for either KC Dash or San Diego, Chicago, and then whoever wins out of those two matchups will then face each other in the final to claim the league. Now,
and we should note that this is not happening this coming weekend. Everybody's on international break, which is important for this reason. The teams who do not have a bye will be getting very tired international players back immediately from friendlies and have to jump right back into the NWSL, compared to OL and Portland, who will be getting international players back and then get to rest them and then get to jump back into the NWSL. So while normally I'd say a bye doesn't super matter, and actually there can be cases made for maintaining momentum,
there's no momentum to be made because they're all disappearing off.
Exactly. In this specific case, the rest will actually really factor in. We're going to talk more about this next week, but I'm just going to kind of drop this in preview because I think it's important. It just needs to maybe still be part of the conversation. The Challenge Cup finals were two East Coast teams, and neither of those teams are even in the playoffs. And that just feels like it's still part of the narrative. How? We'll find out. Tune in next week. Let's go around the world, around the world. I could keep going.
Please don't. Over to Champions League. The draw for the group stages of the Champions League have been announced. Chelsea find themselves in a group with PSG and Real Madrid. Arsenal face a tough group with both the reigning champions Lyon and surprise quarterfinalists Juventus. Both Wolfsburg and Barcelona are in separate groups with slightly easier routes. But as we have seen previously, there is no guarantee in Champions League.
As predicted, the roster for Spain for their upcoming friendlies has dropped and features none of the 15 players embroiled in the latest scandal. When asked about what has been said, Jorge Vilda, head coach, claims that he has always been an open communicator and is hurt and embarrassed by what has been said about him, and that this entire event is bringing shame on the women's game. Here at the Women's Soccer Show, we obviously stand behind the players. You should not listen to any claims made by Jorge Vilda. I'm paraphrasing now, but our hearts go out to them. Yep. We stand behind the players.
And speaking of friendlies, it's the big matchup on Friday at 8:30 UK time with the reigning world champions taking on the reigning European champions. Yes, it's the US versus England. It's the Sarah and Ali derby. England versus the US at Wembley. The Lionesses will then take on the Czech Republic on Monday down in Brighton. The US themselves will then take on the aforementioned Spain in a friendly on Tuesday, the 11th of October. Spain also have another friendly on Friday, taking on Sweden.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football games, including women's football. Want to know why Miedemar scores so many goals? Do you want to explore how City have turned it around this season? Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and sign up to learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for €10. That's €40 off the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
So for the final section of this episode, we have the aforementioned interview with Suzy Wrack. This was such a fun chat. We talked everything from her book to her allegiance to Arsenal to what she feels about Emma Hayes' theory about the Premier League taking over the WSL. We covered it all. So we're going to leave you with that, but please do follow us on socials, check out our Patreon. We get extended content, including interviews like this. We are gifting you this beauty of an interview because it was too good just to keep on Patreon. But we put all of our unedited, raw interviews up on Patreon. So if you want more things like what you hear with Suzy, please go check that out. We've taken a lot of organising, but we have finally got Suzy Wrack on the show with us. Hello, Suzy.
Hey guys, how you doing?
I'm taking this intro because me and Suzy first met on a very cold, I believe it was November day, up in Sunderland, when England were playing Austria for one of their qualification matches. And it was very touch and go whether it was going to go ahead because it had been gale force winds all day. And the first time I met Suzy, we were sat moaning about our accommodation in Sunderland.
Honestly, I thought that couldn't be beaten, and then I stayed in the Sheffield Easy Hotel during the Euros for the semi-final, and that beat it. But I mean,
wait, yeah, I think I was in that hotel.
Places. Oh god, it was so grim. No window.
Oh
the
my
air
god,
conditioning was broken.
Suzy,
it was
I had the
ridiculously
same
hot.
experience.
Are you having flashbacks?
Yes, I'm having wartime flashbacks. Basically, I kid you not, my girlfriend and I walked into that room and we both just had this moment. You know when nobody wants to admit to the other that oh, this is really bad right now. It was
so to get myself out of that situation, I was supposed to be staying there 2 nights. I stayed there the night before to cover the press conference, and then I was staying there after the game. Yeah. And I rang up my guys at work, and I was like, I can't do another night. I just can't. I've got to record 2 back-to-back over-hour-long podcasts the following morning, and I've not even got a desk or a window. I was like, I can't do it. And so I got them to book me an extra night in Milton Keynes because I was going to the second semi-final.
Nice.
And so I drove after the game to Milton Keynes. I got to Milton Keynes to my hotel at, I want to say 2:30 in the morning. No. And then I got to the desk and they said, oh, we've not got your extra day added. We told them that we didn't have space. And I was like, okay.
The lobby is better than the Easy Hotel. I don't care.
I was like, oh, but they told me that they had added the extra night and it was all fine. And luckily, there had been one person who hadn't checked in yet for the night, and they basically gave me this person's room. So no idea if that person then rocked up like an hour later and was like, "Hi, here I am to check in." But yeah, I ended up crawling into my room at like 3 o'clock after they tried to find a room for me in the middle of nowhere in Milton Keynes. But it was still better than the Easy Hotel.
Shout out to Easy Hotel. And if you're listening to this and you choose to stay there, at least you had all of the facts. But anyways, this is not actually why we had you on, Suzy, although I'm really happy that you just brought that back into my memory. Allie, do you want to ask what we asked right before we recorded, or shall we move along?
So I want to say, do you have to be impartial, or do you actually have a football team that you support that you can talk about, or is it you have to keep tight-lipped?
Well, I mean, so a lot of journalists don't have football teams, or they pretend they don't. And I just think that's really, really weird, because like, how does anyone get into this job if they don't like football and don't have a football team that they've grown up supporting, right? So I'm, for that reason, always quite honest and vocal about my support for Arsenal, and sometimes it bites me on the arse in that, like, on Twitter, people go, "Oh, Suzy putting something into a Spurs article about Arsenal potentially breaking their records of attendance and all that kind of stuff," or "Oh yeah, typical Suzy slagging off Chelsea," or something like that.
Right.
When I write about teams, like, I am extremely impartial. I have slagged off Arsenal no end over the years. I want women's football to be better and to improve, and I want teams to be good. And I actually like a lot of the it's like the men's game. I couldn't do it. Well, I could, but it's a different kettle of fish, because it's a different like type of support. But women's football, I know a lot of the players, I know all the managers, and I like them all. Like, do I like Rhiannon Skinner? Yes, she's brilliant. Do I think she's doing a great job at Spurs? Yes. So that's not really a problem for me. I don't have any trouble or difficulty. I get a little bit emotional when I'm watching Arsenal women potentially, like, vie for the title, or like go out the Champions League or something like that. But will I slag them off if they're rubbish? Yes, I will. But I grew up supporting Arsenal, and when I was a kid, Arsenal women played in the park across the road from my council estate, and the players, I was like 4 or 5 years old, and the players leafleted my council estate saying, "We're playing across the road in Shoreditch Park, come and watch us." And so me and my dad would like trot across on Saturdays or Sundays or whenever it was and watch them play and train on the weekends. So like, I've grown up with Arsenal women, so I've been a massive Arsenal fan all my life, men's and women's team, and the women's team support started quite early as well, in a way that most people don't really have the opportunity to have that sort of knowledge that their women's team exists and plays and is good. And I think that definitely helped me have an awareness that women could play football. Like, loads of people don't have or haven't had that. It's only really now that people sort of are getting that chance of growing up having known that women's football exists from an early age.
Yeah, you're kind of foreshadowing obviously what we want to talk about, but just to stay on Arsenal for a quick second, it is people like you in a good way, like the English Arsenal fans, which is why I say I'm like an Arsenal fan light, because it'll never come with the same like ownership. Like, I didn't walk across the street and watch Arsenal. I discovered them much later in my life. The first time I was in London and I went to a pub to watch a soccer game and Arsenal was playing, and I was like, I guess I'm an Arsenal fan now. Here we go. It just so happened that they were, the best women's team for a very long time, and I happened upon it. But that's why I say Arsenal light, because that runs deep. But I will say, with that also comes, I feel like you can slag off your own team more than you could really slag off any others, because you care more. So you probably have, when it's bad, it feels way worse.
Totally right. And ultimately, like, for me, women's football generally, I'm pushing it to be better. I want it to be better. For it to be better, all the teams need to be good and competitive and exciting. And I want to enjoy watching the games. I want to enjoy watching every game. I don't just want to enjoy watching the Arsenal games. Like, I can sit and watch an absolute like thriller between Reading and West Ham or whoever it is, and like absolutely love that game. And you just want to watch good football. And I'm completely able to separate the support from the journalism. Yeah. Apart from every now and again getting a little bit happy in the press box, but even then, I'm like, holding it in because you're not allowed to celebrate in press boxes. It's my job. Like,
Totally.
my job is to analyze it and write about it objectively. So
Yeah.
it's not, I don't really have a problem doing it.
It's one of my favorite sites to be in a press box and watch people try to suppress their reactions. It's sometimes more exciting than the goal that just got scored to watch people be like, oh, no. Like, chill out.
Mate, I have to just point this out. I, diehard West Ham fan, was in the press box when Kate Longhurst scored that equaliser against Tottenham. Do you know how hard it was to sit on my hands when that went in the dying seconds? But I was going to say, so you don't do what I do, which is use your influence to get in so you don't have to give your opponents your money. Because I certainly did that for Tom.
Don't make her answer that. We're going to move on.
So luckily, 9 times out of 10, I'm covering the game anyway. So like, I just get in because I'm in the press box covering the games. And if there's an Arsenal game on that I'm not covering, I'm usually at another game. So it's not like I can just like wheedle my way in. But I can watch any game I want really if I'm free. But then my husband and my son would never see me, and probably I'd end up divorced and like seeing my kid once a month or something, because my entire life would be taken up by watching football if I tried to get to every game. It's like I haven't been to a men's game. I used to go to men's games a lot. I got to, sort of like 15, 20 games a season, and I cannot remember the last time I went to an Arsenal men's game, just because covering women's football takes up so much of my like weekend and evening time that I can't like give more to football and take away from family life.
And because they're not as fun to watch and just generally worse. But that's my opinion, not yours. Okay. Yeah.
At the moment they are. At the moment it's fun to be an Arsenal fan, but for the past however many years it's not been.
Yeah, I stopped watching the men in 2020. I had enough, and I was just like, it's done. I can't do this anymore. Anyways,
I do have a massive disillusionment with men's football, full stop. Just because of like the obscene money, the sports washing, all of that kind of stuff. And obviously there's that filters into the women's game, right? Like the ownership of Man City women is the same as the ownership of Man City men, all that kind of stuff. That sits uncomfortably with me, but there is a slight removal from that being directly influential in the women's game than it is in the men's, although obviously various Middle Eastern countries, you look at Newcastle and stuff as well, building women's team, they are very much doing it and having women's teams because it helps their reputation, and that's what a lot of these ownership structures are doing, is trying to present a clean, respectable image, and they they're using women's teams to do that as much as they're using men's teams to do that, and that does make me uncomfortable too.
Absolutely.
But there is a slight difference, I think, between the men's and the women's, just generally in the money involved in the game and the show that it's become and how commercial it's become and all of that kind of thing isn't quite as bad, even if it does still have dodgy ownerships and things.
Yeah. And a lot of that, I mean, I'm glad you said all that, because a lot of that is some of the wonderful conversations that came up at the Equality Summit, where we first really got to connect with you, just talking around fans, money, ownership. And for me, actually coming from the US, it's just really interesting to really take a step back and look at the difference purely from that perspective between England and the US. But that is a lovely segue into what we also want to talk to you about, which is a book that you wrote called A Women's Game, The Rise, Fall, and Rise Again of Women's Soccer. This dropped around the Euros, which I absolutely love. So I think we've already really scratched the surface on a lot of the like themes of the book. But before we get into that, just because of her, a book is a lot of writing. And as a writer who also does a lot of writing, how was the process of writing a full book for you?
Oh no, I hated absolutely every minute of it. Didn't want to write a book, had no intention of writing a book, was approached by a really like nice guy, Max, my agent, who was like, Women's Euros is coming, it's going to be in England, you're the perfect person to write this book, blah blah, general history of women's football. And I was like, no, not up for it. And then he talked me into it because it just made a lot of sense. But I was saying this the other day to someone, I can't remember who I was saying it to, but I'm a writer that doesn't like writing, right? So like, I like the feeling of having written, but the actual process of writing is awful. And I don't know why we all do it to ourselves. And I was chatting to someone the other day, someone I work with, we were both saying, we're delaying articles that really need to be written and we're procrastinating. And then he messaged me this morning, was like, still not started, but I'm about to. Can you send me this contact detail? And I was like, okay, that was 3 days ago that we said neither of us has started these articles, and I still haven't started either. And like, it's a horrible thing, like the pressure of having to write, especially when it's something you really care about as well. If it's an issue that you like really care about, you want to do it justice, and you agonize over it for so much longer. And then, but then it's the feeling of having written is very satisfying, and pressing send and things. So yeah, like, yeah, the book was not fun to write, and like a global pandemic did not help because everything was shut, and getting to archives and stuff became nigh on impossible. Interviews were all on Zoom, and obviously I was doing a lot of stuff on Zoom through work anyway, so like I had real like major Zoom fatigue.
That's real.
Able to do that I would have like maybe liked to, and got around a little bit more and covered some other countries beyond the ones I cover in the book. Like, you know, I think there's definitely, that said, it's hard to write about countries where there's so little recorded about women's football. So, you know, if you look at like Africa, for example, or Latin America, like there's not a huge amount out there. So that would involve a whole level of research beyond really what I'd be capable of. So like, I try and acknowledge that is a deficiency in the book within it. And like, I guess I sort of say it's a more of a history of the professional women's game than necessarily like the women's game full stop, because there are holes in it, and like covering the entire world of women's football would be like virtually impossible. But yeah, like I enjoyed finishing it.
In the book, you explore the question of how far should the sport advance in independence from the men's game. We've discussed this a lot, both at the Equality Summit and also on this podcast. We specifically look at the relation to the NWSL versus the WSL because of the independence the NWSL has compared to what the WSL has with the Prem. How do you view the importance of the independence from the men's game? How critical is it?
Like I think it's vital, and it's why, you know, like I love Emma Hayes in every possible way, but it really disappoints me when she like recently has become very all guns blazing for the Premier League, running the Women's Super League, and like I respect her opinion, but I so disagree with it, because if the Premier League runs Women's Super League, it's going to play second fiddle regardless of how much they are like ideologically invested in it and financially invested in it. Like I just think, why can't, if they really believe in it, and if clubs really believe in their women's teams, then why do they need to benefit from it? Like why can't they just put the money in because they believe in it? Like, so why can't the Premier League help an independent women's Super League get off the ground? Why does it have to have a stake? Why does it have to have a say? Like why does that need to be a thing? And so like my feeling is that it needs independence because it needs someone to fight for it at every table. And if it's at the same table and a part of the table where Premier League decisions are being made, it's always going to play second fiddle, right? If you've got a question of like, everyone in women's football thinks these broadcast times are not good and we need to fight for one of the men's broadcast slots, just one of the slots, we need to have one of them. Like, if it's independent, you've got an ability to fight for that. If it's not, you just sort of you go to Premier League and say, look, this is what we want to do, and they go, no, sorry, we're not interrupting the men's game, right? So that's the thing for me, is like it removes the power of people that care about the league to fight for it and to like properly back it and represent it and not have any sort of other commitments. So in the same way, like the FA, like I think they've done a fantastic job in many respects. They've done a lot wrong as well, don't get me wrong, never like afraid to slag off the FA for all of the bad stuff.
Always brownie points for that.
Exactly. But they have done a lot of good stuff in like developing the Women's Super League into what it is at the moment, which has flaws as well. But the problem that they've got is they have their hands tied behind their back because they're a not-for-profit organisation, so they cannot justify like putting a lot of money, a disproportionate amount of money, into the Women's Super League above, say, disability sport, or youth sport or grassroots. Like, whole different kettle of fish. FA Cup prize money, yes, that should be equalised. If not, the balance tipped the other way towards the women's game and the the youth cups and all that kind of stuff, in my opinion, because they are a not-for-profit organisation, so they shouldn't be prioritising the men's game in that sense. But in terms of just general funding into the league and the sport generally, obviously it's the Premier League that runs it, so they don't have that, but they do have all these other commitments to other areas of the sport that they just can't justify the big expense that's needed to really accelerate the growth of the Women's Super League. So for me, it's independence, and it's independence without strings, and it's the right people running it. It's fair representation for clubs from the Championship as well as the Women's Super League. It's no private finance. I don't want big private equity firms trying to profit out of the Women's Super League. I want the Women's Super League to make money in its own right. I want clubs and the FA and the Premier League to invest in it because they believe in it, and to ring fence that money and to give it to them and say, you run this the best way you want, and there are no strings attached to this money because we believe that it deserves this investment. And then I want it to be run on a basis of it growing and building the pyramid and grassroots girls football. That's my utopia. But whether that will happen, I think very, very, very unlikely, because ultimately the model of the men's game is what rules, and it's the quick fix, right? Because that's where all the money is. So the Premier League is attractive because it has money. The big men's clubs are attractive because they have money. But you're building on the basis of a lack of sustainability, which isn't necessarily it's building on sand, isn't it? Unless so that if anything goes wrong, like a global pandemic where all football has to stop, actually everything suddenly looks a lot more fragile.
I could not agree more on all bases, and I have a million things to say, but I won't because we're interviewing you. But I just, and it's part of what was being discussed, frankly, at the Equality Summit during the Euros in a lot of different ways, from a lot of different angles, right? From the angle of the fans and why the women's fans are so different from the men's fans, and how do we keep this lovely bubble that seems to have been created around the women's games, to, the money at the top, and how do you keep the kind of dirty money, I guess I'll call it, that has infiltrated the men's game and essentially taken it away from the fans, and how do you take that? And it all comes down to it's infiltrating the women's game right now because there isn't that independence. And as somebody in the US who's seen how the WNBA lives in the shadow of the NBA and forever will, it's nice to see how, yes, the NWSL has its problems. I am the first person to say that there are a lot of them. And we'll start with the pay structure, but the pay structure is also a sustainable one based on a league that can grow independently. So we talk, like Ali said, we talk a lot here about how it's a double-edged sword. Yes, in the WSL, these athletes are getting paid more, and that's fantastic. And it comes at a price. I guess I know you. Well, I guess I'll ask you this. I know you don't specifically examine those differences within the book, but do you see what do you see in terms of differences? I know you're really deeply entrenched in the England game. What do you see as the differences between the US and England right now in terms of women's soccer? And that includes in the fan bases.
There's a lot to be liked about the independence of the NWSL and the way it's been done, and the fact that US soccer is still putting money into it to help it reach a point of sustainability and to give it some kind of safety net, I suppose, to keep it going until it reaches a point of sustainability and in true independence, and has the ability to withdraw the money that it's putting in because it's making enough in its own right. That's all likable things. Obviously there's like you say, big flaws in the system as well. I think the fact that there's so many independent clubs is also a good thing, and I both like and dislike the Angel City type models where you get these rich investors coming in, and there's a lot to be liked about that model where you've got very powerful women coming together to run and back women's sport and women's football. But do I think that should be the model that is widely championed? No. For me, it's supporter-led football. It's supporter-run clubs. It's the likes of the Lewis FCs and the I think the FC Uniteds here, whose women's team are still way down the bottom of the pile, but are a club that are run by their supporters. Like that for me is the better model, because what is like, it all boils down to what is football for? Like what's the point in it, right? It's fun, it's a game, and we enjoy watching it and we enjoy playing it. And what is its role in communities? It's got a huge amount of power, and like in communities it can wield a huge amount of power, and it can influence ideas, it can help fitness, it can do all these great things for, you know, the most disadvantaged of kids, who will engage with it in a way that they won't engage with schoolwork, but you know, you can use it to do beautiful things and help them engage in schoolwork in a way that they don't necessarily. So like for me it all boils down to what is football for. And when you've got sort of big clubs with, you know, billionaire owners or whatever they may be, and obviously talking men's football here, calling the shots and running it on a for-profit basis and, you know, sucking as much money as they can out of it as humanly possible, it's just not the way football should be. I mean, like my vision for the women's game would only ever happen if there were big changes to the men's game as well, I think, in a like quite an idealistic way. Like in my mind, you want to completely scrap football and start from the ground up again, because it's so far gone from being able to sort of, you know, like the idea that Arsenal fans, when there was all the trouble with Stan Kroenke and you know, the possible Spotify takeover and all that kind of stuff, like you know, it was floated, could Arsenal fans buy it? And sometimes it's floated, or could Man United fans you know, own Manchester United again, and that kind of thing. And the answer is no, because there's no way fans could afford it on the basis of the way it's run at the moment. So yeah, like I'm very much like, you sort of have to burn it all down and start again. And I think that's the only way we'd get like the true vision for women's football that we want, is if we also change the men's game, because the men's game is so influential on the way the women's game's run. And I think that's the same in like the States as well. And like there's so many good things like that. I think, like, you know, the draft system, for example, equalizes the league in a way that you know, we struggle for over here, because obviously you've got the most money, you can buy the best players, and that's the way it is. And there's this inbuilt equalizing with the draft system that makes it a little bit more interesting. But then obviously they can also sign players too, so that's like counteracted by this almost like drive to like Europeanize. That's not a right word, but like change the game and move in the direction of the way it's run in Europe, generally speaking. And like, you know, I think that's a shame, because that's actually something that is quite a nice aspect of American sports generally. And then obviously, like, I would love to see Title IXs absolutely everywhere in the world. Like I think every country should have that kind of system built into their government, like their legal system, into their laws, and like an essential part of like sports as like an important part of education, just because it should be, right? It just should be. And that's the reason why the US has been so good, is they've got this huge player pool that is being invested in, that has to be invested in, and that makes players feel like they have a right and they belong in that space in a way that we don't have here. And I think that's why you see so many outspoken American athletes and far fewer like outspoken English athletes, is because we're very grateful over here, right? We're very like, oh, like, well, let's not kick up a fuss. We've been given a little bit more from the table. Well, hey, you know, like, let's just celebrate what we've got and we'll work with it. And, you know, oh, if we play a little bit better, then maybe we'll get a few more crumbs. Whereas the US, like, there's an expectation that they deserve decent facilities and like more and equality, and that comes from like having like law on your side, like backing your right to exist in that space. So yeah, like there's a few, I mean, there's nice things about the US sports space, and then there's, you know, there's things creeping in from here that aren't so good, and then, you know, other aspects that I think, you know, when you look at like the Angel Cities and stuff, you're grappling with a lot of people trying to answer these questions of what women's football should look like and how it becomes sustainable and like where money should come from and things like that. And I just think that there needs to be a more like base level conversation about what sport is, why we play it, why we watch it, what it's for, and then go from there.
Well, Suzy, thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate your time. Really enjoyed this chat, and I mean it that next time I'm in England, I will buy you a pint, and we won't record it. We'll just talk for about 6 hours because we've already kept you for twice the time we asked for.
I'll buy you the pint.
Okay, fair enough. I'll buy you the second round then. Thank you so much, Suzy. Before we let you go, for those of you listening who want to buy Suzy's book, it's called A Women's Game: The Rise, Fall, and Rise Again of Women's Soccer. If you Google it, you will see tons of places where you can purchase it from immediately. But Suzy, is there anything else you want to highlight, where they can follow you, or any other work that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can see all of my stuff day to day is on The Guardian, and very findable if you just search my name. My Twitter handle is @SuzyWrack, and you can get my book from pretty much everywhere. Faber is the publisher, and you can get it off their website and the Guardian website as well. But then, Amazon actually have a really good deal on the audiobook as well at the moment. And it's out in the US, I think, next month officially. Like, I think it started to drip out already.
Yeah, I was on it on Amazon today, so it's definitely it's on pre-sale. It's becoming available. Great.
And I'm hoping to do an update with the Euros in it at some point as well, which would be good.
Amazing. Everybody go give Suzy a follow. She's a great follow on Twitter too. Suzy, thank you again for being on.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.